Hello everybody, welcome to Catherine Sews. In my last video, which was how to sew the perfect art, I promised I would make a video about how to sew a side seam pocket, but I'm actually going to break that into two videos. Today's video is going to be making the side seam pocket in the way that you're probably most familiar with. It's the way that most instructions from commercial patterns show you. But what they don't show you is how and when to serge your edges. So I'm going to make some modifications to show you how to do that to keep it as clean as possible on the inside without adding extra bulk that might show on the outside. The next video will be a sportier version of the side seam pocket that you can top stitch and that you can secure with bar tacks to give it that more rugged look. The thing about commercial patterns and their instructions is that they generally don't show you where to serge because they're written for people that don't have sergers. If you do, I'm hoping this will be really helpful for you. Now, of course, when I'm serging in this video, you can just use the zigzag setting on your sewing machine, or if you have an overlock stitch on your sewing machine, that works too. This is the side seam pocket we're going to do today. I think it is quite nice for a dressier garment. It's quite invisible, it looks good, and you know what? It's nice and easy for beginners. This is sort of the standard construction for these kinds of pockets, sewing one pocket piece to the front, one to the back, and then you sew around that whole pocket and side seam and a little bit at the top here. But they don't tell you when to serge your edges or finish your edges in whatever method you choose. So what I'm adding here is just a little small serge right at the end of those two pockets, so that when we put them together, you'll be able to serge the rest of this as one layer. You won't have two layers of serging there, adding extra bulk. So we're going to serge there first. Then after we sew it on, we're going to serge the whole side seam of both front and back separately. Then after we sew this whole edge, that's when we're going to serge the rest of the pocket, so that we just have the one layer of serging there, and so we're not adding extra bulk. If you're making something that is quite dressy and you don't think you'll be throwing it in the washing machine, then I would suggest not serging inside the front piece, because that is going to be basically all enclosed. It's not going to be exposed anywhere, and it would just be adding extra bulk if we serged in here. If you are going to be throwing this into the washing machine, then yeah, you probably do want to serge in there. So let me take you through how I put that together. I've cut out my pocket pieces and my front and back. Now I'm just doing one pocket for this demonstration, but if you're doing a full skirt or pant, you'll need to cut 4 of your pocket pieces. Okay, now one thing about cutting those 4, you can do 2 in your skirt fabric and 2 in lining if that helps you save fabric. Don't do 4 in lining though, and let me show you why. This is a skirt that I bought and I really loved it. It's really cute, but look at the way that they did the pocket here. Can you see that this is just lining here? It's not the same fabric, and it really looks cheap like that. It's fine to do the front one in lining because that's all going to be tucked in and it's not going to show at all. So by all means do the front one in lining if that helps you save fabric, but don't do the one that attaches to the back in lining, because you know what, it's always going to show, and I just don't enjoy wearing this skirt because I feel like that just looks so cheap. If you just don't have enough fabric to do your pockets in the same fabric, at least put about 1.5 inch wide strip of your fabric down your pocket piece and just sew that in place, and then continue as you would normally. So now the notches that I need, this notch that they give you, it's useful. It's not super critical though, because we're going to be matching this to the skirt at the top there, but why not? You can go ahead and give yourself 2 little snips at the notches there. On the front, you can have those matching ones if you want. As I say, they're not critical because we know we're matching that top corner. What you do want is to mark these circles with a notch as well, just on the front, just a little snip pointing in at those circles and a little snip pointing at those circles, because we're going to need that information later. We don't really need it on the back, just on the front. The first thing I'm going to do is go to my serger and just serge that little bit at the bottom of my pocket pieces. So I'm going to go to the serger and come right back. Don't worry, we'll serge the rest of the pocket later. So now one pocket piece goes to the back, matching up those top corners. and that double notch that we snipped. And one pocket piece goes to the front. I'm going to go to the rig of the machine and sew there, and then I'm going to serge. And for the back, I'm going to serge the whole side seam. For the front, again, as I say, if you want to be able to machine wash this, then yeah, go ahead and serge the whole front edge. But if you want this to be just as clean as possible without adding that extra bulk of the serging, then I'm just going to start my serging about here and come down so that that front edge has a little less bulk in it. Start with a back tack, match up your edges and your notches. Once we're done sewing this, we'll go straight to the serger. For the back, I'm going to start right at the top and serge the whole way down. But for the front, I'm just going to start a couple inches above that bottom of the pocket. At the iron now, we're going to press the seam allowance toward the pocket for both the front and the back. Okay, so now I'm putting the front and back right sides together, matching up the top corner here and around the pocket bag and right down the side seam. And just like the instructions are showing here, I'm going to sew around the pocket and all the way up and then down, and then that little bit up here. So that's what those two extra notches are for, to tell us where to stop this one and how far to come up with this one. Notice it also says we're going to be clipping the seam allowance right there. So I'll show you all of that. There's the notch that I had clipped. So I know I want to be sewing this part, and I want to be sewing inside or to the left of that line. I want to pin it so that these two seam lines are right on top of each other and that they're matching at the top here. So one pin in there will do. And then I can feel through that those two seams are right on top of each other, and another pin right where that notch is. So pinning with the top edges matching, the seam lines right on top of each other, and another pin right where that notch was. Down here, the notch got a little hidden in my serging there. I can see it's right there, so I'm going to pin there. And again, just making sure that my seam lines of the pocket are right on top of each other. Good. I'm going to be sewing here and then all the way around up to that pin and down. So finishing with a back tack right where that notch is. And then just coming right over to the top corners of the pockets, just making sure those corners are together. And here we go. Coming around that curve, and I'm going to aim for this pin right here and pivot when I get to the outside of that seam. Good. And then pivot and come down. Back at the serger, I'm going to serge the rest of that pocket edge now and just overlap where I serged and come off. Here we go. Now you see why I serged that little bit of the pocket first, because if I had tried to do that, I would not have been able to get up in here without cutting my side seam. So doing that little bit first means that I can serge that with just one layer instead of having two layers and having extra bulk. So now I'm going to press everything flat just to set the thread. That reduces bulk as well. And now open up the side seam. The pocket comes over the front, and this is where we have to do that snip. I want to be able to open out that side seam. So anywhere in here, I can just do a snip and turn that right out. And now I can press my seam open and flat below the pocket and all coming towards the front at the pocket. A nice finishing press on the outside. And there you've got a beautiful side seam pocket that is just so nice and invisible. The only drawback with this pocket is that you can't top stitch it because the seam allowance is coming forward here and then open here. And we really need the seam allowances all to go to the back to be able to top stitch that. Okay, so there you have it. There's our beautiful side seam pocket. It's really nice for a dressier garment that you wouldn't top stitch anyway. It works really well and it's pretty easy for beginners. This is the style I'll be showing you in the next video, where all the seam allowance goes toward the back so you can give it a nice top stitch on the edge of the pocket and along your whole side seam. And you can even put on these little bar tacks for extra durability. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you get that video as soon as it comes out. If you like today's video, please give me a like because that just means the world to me. My name is Catherine and I can't wait to sew with you again. Take care.